Words of joy and hope. Vigil of Easter, Year C.
Dal Vangelo secondo
Words
Luca.
from readings from Luke chapter 24, verse 1 to 12, and commentary by Father Fernando Armelini. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly two men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Commentary by Father Fernando Armelini. Words of joy and hope. Happy Easter to all. In the readings we have just heard, there is a reference to a large stone that was found in front of the sepulchre of Jesus, and that it was rolled away. At the back, you can see the picture of one of these stones that go back to the time of Jesus. It is located in front of a sepulchre that has been discovered along the street that descends from Mount Carmel toward Megiddo. It is from the time of Jesus. It gives the idea about the sepulchre, and there are very few. Only 4 remain with the round stone in front of the grotto. It was people's destiny according to the Israelite mentality. What was people's destiny according to the Israelites' mentality? It was not different from that of the other people. It said that when a person concludes his existence in this world, go to Hades, in Greek, inferi. The Hebrews said in Sheol. Sheol was the underground world where everybody will end up going at the end of their lives. And what was in this underground world? All the dead end up there, sharing the same condition as larvae, man, zombie, and everybody was there. Rich and poor, kings and slaves, young and old, good and bad, all of them in this grotto. And there was no distinction among good and bad, because according to the Israelites thought, God made justice in this world, rewarding those who believe well and punishing those who didn't. And what you see behind was the door of Sheol. In Hebrew, the word Sheol comes from the verb shal, which means to call in. That mouth invites all to enter. That is the destiny of humankind. This door to Sheol scared also the Hebrews, but probably less than it scares us today, because for the Israelites, the passage through that door was not something threatening but a human condition. What worried the pious Israelite was to enter there too soon before the fulfillment of this life. The book of Genesis, for example, says that Abraham died happy, old, and rich in joy, and he was united to his ancestors. This passage from our world to Sheol was less dramatic for an Israelite of former times compared with us. We are more attached to the reality of this world compared with those old people. The reason is that the lifestyle now is much better than in the past centuries. The fear the Israelite was to be called too soon to Sheol. So when we read the Psalms, we often find that the psalmist tell the Lord, I prayed to you and you have saved me from Sheol after a long illness, as if he was born again and out of the mouth of the inferi Sheol. My life was at the border of Sheol, but you, Lord, saved me. We find these expressions in the book of Psalms. But people do not resign to this destiny of life there. This grotto in the bowls of dark earth where one lives as larvae. During the second century before Christ, in Israel, the idea that there should be a resurrection exists. But what did they understood by resurrection? They understood a return of the just to this life. We find this idea, for example, in the words of Martha when she tells Jesus, I know that my brother will rise on the last day. That is, when the reign of God will come to this world and the just will take part in this reign and will rise. But Jesus answers her, Martha, it is not like that. I am the resurrection and life. Those who believe in me, even if they die biologically, do not die. This is the great novelty. People have always tried to find an answer to this most anguishing enigma. Will something of us remain, or our destiny is like that of plants and animals? Is there something new for us? And Christianity is of no use if it does not give an answer to this enigma. The rest, the ethical dimension of the Christian, makes us proud, but it is the consequence of this understanding of people's destiny that was revealed by Christ at Easter. As Christians, we are justly proud of the sublime life proposed and lived by Jesus. Let us think, for example, the discourse of the mountain, the Beatitudes, about the unconditional love, even for enemies. The love that Jesus lived in full. And we are rightly proud of this proposal of a humanism that has no comparison with any other humanism. There is no humanism higher than the one proposed by Jesus of Nazareth. This marvelous proposal remains even if our life ends up with death and dissolves as a matter that dissolves like the stones, like everything else. Our moral proposal remains because it is good, it is being human, and it is being as Jesus of Nazareth. For even if everything finishes, it is worthwhile to live life as He tells us. We still ask ourselves, if this moral proposal is still valid, if later we would arrive at the conclusion that the love we have built up dissolves as if it had never been there. Because if you think that it's too hard to live this moral life, if we think that from the love we have cherished nothing will remain, then we are tempted to abandon everything and live as everybody else lives, thinking only about ourselves, enjoy the present moment. We would need a heroic strength to renounce selfishness, unless there is the certitude that the love we have built up will not disappear. The question we ask ourselves today, is it worth to make renunciations, take care of others, if at the end nothing remains? If I build up a house and plan for it to last 1,000 years, then I will prepare it in a certain way. But if I know that it is not going to be it is going to be destroyed after a few days, then I do not work with the same enthusiasm. Two questions. Rethinking about the proposal of man made by Jesus of Nazareth. Let us think about him. This is the question. This Jesus who gave us marvelous teachings and that has lived out these teachings, is he alive or dead? When Jesus of Nazareth entered the grotto, because as man he accepted the human condition, and so is mortal, because if he is not a mortal, then he is not a man. Therefore, becoming man, the Son of Man, the Son of God knew that his destiny was to enter into that grotto of Sheol. Therefore, the question, Jesus of Nazareth, who entered that grotto, is alive or is he dead? And all his history, like all matter, does it remain or disappear or not? This is the first question. But there is another that for us Christians is still more challenging. When we participate in the Eucharistic banquet, we realize a nuptial gesture. We unite to Christ. We unite our lives to His, like spouses unite. Now the question is, when we participate in the Eucharistic banquet, do we unite ourselves to the one who is alive or the one who is dead? These are very important questions. And there is still a third question, and it is the one that interests us even more. Is there a hope after death? If Christianity does not respond to these questions, it is worth nothing. Therefore, if Christ is alive, then a life spent for others has an eternal value. A last consideration before we enter into the text of the Gospel. I am advancing slowly because it is the central theme of our faith. Jesus did not come back from the sepulchre as he entered, because to come back, to go out from that door of Sheol, means to come back to this reality that we live, the material reality. It's a reanimation. If one comes back from that door, then later will have to die again. Therefore, to come out of that door, as it happens to Lazarus, he was brought out, reanimated, but then death sent him there back again to that grotto of Sheol. When Jesus entered this grotto, he met all those who came to Sheol ahead of him. Humanity does not have a life capable of conquering death, remained in Sheol. Only the life, the eternal one, is not subjected to death. And if man does not receive this life of the eternal one as a gift, then he remains in Sheol. That is the biological destiny. And when Jesus entered this grotto of Sheol, he found all those who had died ahead of him. So, what did Jesus do? He took all those who were in the grotto and brought them out of the gate from which they had entered. The door to enter the world, our world, then death would bring them all back there. What did Jesus do at Easter? When Jesus entered the sepulchre, something extraordinary, sublime happened. The strength of the Eternal One entered there and was communicated to all people. Even those who died ahead of Jesus of Nazareth did not come out. Jesus entering that sepulchre at Easter destroyed it, took all of them who were in the grotto and brought them to the life of the Eternal One. That is the victory over death, because to come back, a reanimation does not mean to defeat death. Therefore, if one receives as a gift, then as a gift the life that the Son of God brought into this world, the whole life has meaning, and the whole message of Jesus of Nazareth reaches its fulfillment at Easter. Because at Easter, he came to show why a life given out of love is not destroyed but enters in the world of God. So be aware of the difference between the reanimation of Lazarus coming back to this world and the risen one who is shown so well in the Byzantine icon, going to the gutter of the world and takes by hand all people to bring them to the Father's house, the world of God. The resurrection is not verifiable with our senses, but the reanimation is. If Jesus had come out from that grotto and presented himself again in our human condition, then we would have seen him, touched him, verified him. Then that would not have been the resurrection. The resurrection is not verifiable with our senses because it belongs to the world of God. It presupposes a different kind of view, different from the way we see. With our senses, we cannot see the risen one. It is necessary a view that is given by God to that believer. Then the invisible can be seen. Let us now go to the gospel text that was read for us. At daybreak, on the first day of the week, thus our text begins with the women who moved in the darkness of the Easter morning. It is the world of darkness about to discover a new light. A world emerges, a new day, an eternal day, a day of light, a day in which the enigma that the people always had, because man is not resigned to see their own story of love destroyed, then light comes. The light can only come from heaven. The women arrive bringing the spices. What were the Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, mother of James, expecting? What were they expecting? That will be mentioned at the end of the reading. They were hoping to find a cadaver and not and to do what? They came to anoint the cadaver with the spices. What is the meaning of this gesture? It is to automatize the stench of the dead. This is what people always try to do, to overcome any possible way the monster of death. So at times they embalm, mummify, but mummifying a cadaver is not to conquer death. It is just a monument to its victory. A mummified cadaver shows that death prevailed. What do the women find? They had no idea to the surprise that was waiting for them. An extraordinary event. They find the door moved away from the sepulchre. It is an invitation for the women to look inside. To look inside of Sheol. Inside that mouth that have swallowed humanity is a whole look inside. Jesus entered there. And they look inside and do not find the body of the Lord. This is not a proof of the resurrection. It is just a sign. They do not know what had happened. The women are invited to contemplate the Sheol. And the Sheol is empty. Even the body of Jesus is not there. No one is there. They have not returned. It is empty because they all went to the other side. Christ entering the sepulchre with the divine strength that he had introduced all in the world of God. But the women do not understand anything. And two men in dazzling garment appeared to them. We have here a literary device. They are the biblical images that are used to describe an event that goes beyond our senses. Two men. Mark refers to a young man, the message being that it is a new young life. All people enter the sepulchre, but there begins an eternal youth. Therefore, the one who announces is a young man. In Matthew, there is a dramatic presentation. The angel coming down from heaven removes the stone as a sign of victory, seats on it and tells the women, "You are looking for Jesus, the crucified. He is not here." John mentions two angels. Luke says two men. Two indicates that it is a credible testimony. Two giving testimony and in white clothes. It is the message from heaven to the women. The women in the presence of that empty sepulchre had the interior revelation that gave them the certitude of the event. Something extraordinary, a divine intervention that conquered death. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. It represents the Christian community that was confused at the presence of this event, difficult to understand. How is it possible that the sepulchre is empty? The two men give the explanation from heaven and explain what had happened in that sepulchre. And tell the women, "Why do you seek the risen one among the dead? He has not been reanimated. He would not then be risen. He would not then be the risen one because death would conquer him again. He is the risen one and no kind of death can touch. He is risen. He is not here. Remember what he said when he was in Galilee. He is risen, not reanimated. When we say that he is risen, it means that he entered in the world where death has no access. In any kind of death, in pain, suffering, sickness, All that pertains to the world of death does not exist anymore. It is the world of the living. The two men tell the women, remember when he talked in Galilee? What did he said in Galilee? What did he say in Galilee? It is necessary that I give up my life, but on the third day I will enter into the permanent life. A life given, said Jesus. A life given is the one that is kept for eternity. What is not love is destroyed. What is love is divine and it is not destroyed. The two men said to the women, remember what he said to you, that a life of love is not destroyed, but is kept and risen in God's world. And the women remembered this message. This message is very important for us because what the two men said to the women is also for us. How can we make the experience of this risen one? What we know for sure is that on that day of Easter, the sepulchre was found empty because nobody had any doubt about that. Many explanations were given that the sepulchre was found empty. It is not a proof of the resurrection, but the light that gives us the experience of the risen one comes from remembering the life given by Christ. Invisible for the eye, but makes us see the invisible. It shows where this life given leads us. The poor of the heart will see the invisible, to see the world of God. The poor heart are the ones that have a clean heart, not a heart tarnished by idols, hypocrisy, attached to this world as if it were eternal. The poor of heart are those who have the heart and mind free to receive in this light that comes from heaven. The women come back from the sepulchre and become announcers. They leave, go to the disciples, and shared what they had experienced. But their story seemed like nonsense, delirium. The word used is delirium. It is the only time that is used in the New Testament. It tells how far were the disciples to expect a message from heaven of this kind. That Christ had definitively conquered death. But the disciples move, they doubt, marvel for what they have heard. Peter gets up and goes to the sepulchre. He sees the signs of death, the burial clothes. He does not see anything else, but saw that the sepulchre was empty, and went home amazed at what had happened. He has not yet arrived to the Easter faith, but he had already gone one step. He doubted about his certitude. He is ready to doubt about his conviction that man ends in a sepulchre and go to Sheol and everything ends. The road to faith has to pass through these doubts. The one of Peter passed with this thought that after death we enter into the world of God. We also have to pass from this condition that is delirium, to think that everything ends here. The road that those with pure heart consider as definitive passes necessarily through doubt. And those who do not pass through doubts have still the idea that the resurrection is a reanimation. No, to arrive at the faith, to arrive to the faith in the risen one, to the faith of the victory of life in the day of Easter, it is necessary to pass through the doubts that the apostles had also had. But when one remembers what had happened and what Jesus of Nazareth announced, then we arrive to see the risen one with the light of faith, that a life given out of love is not destroyed, but is kept eternally in the world of God. Happy Easter to all.